And welcome to Faith Over Breakfast.
Season 2, episode 38. Well, welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. This is Eric Deepen. I'm back behind the mic.
Back behind the mic.
With Andy Littleton. Andy's from Mission Church, which y'all probably know unless you're new. And I'm from the Village Church. And we are in this town called Tucson, Arizona, where the food is much better than most cities.
Yeah, it's great.
It's pretty amazing.
Sometimes you have to leave to realize
oh my goodness,
just how great it is.
Unless you're probably having sushi, I think, sushi.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we're like the king of sushi.
Yeah. But anyway, we were talking about fatherhood. I didn't know what to expect, but I thought, wow, I think this is one of those podcasts you need to listen to.
Agreed.
Maybe play it over a couple times. And as Andy was saying at the end of the podcast, this would be the podcast to rate. This is the one to put the stars on, to tell us why you listen, because, maybe you think we should be heard by more people, and that's how you can help us.
Yeah, and it'd be weird if we did that.
And I'll tell you what, you put a rating on here, and I'm just going to go out there. You put a rating on, and we will make an ad for you.
Oh, yeah, you'll hear an ad for, because...
Even if we don't know you.
Yeah,
we'll give you an ad.
We'll just give you an ad.
We'll give you a shout out for giving us a rating.
Look at that perk.
There you go.
Anyway, enjoy the conversation.
I don't have to do any. Literally, I put it in, I cut it, I stick it through the machine that boosts the volume, and I throw it up. I don't have to tweak anything. This mic's and this little sucker's perfect.
That, folks, was Eric describing how our podcast gets edited and shared with the public. So with that, welcome to our conversation this morning. Eric is this is a true Faith Over Breakfast, in which I have just finished my typical Chick-fil-A, which I need to clarify is one of the few drive-through breakfast places on my way here. I do like it, but that's the main. I would like more variety, to be honest with you. It's just I have to go out of my way to get it, and I always have about 2 minutes of margin. Eric has picked up one of his go-to breakfasts, a maple, what do they call those?
Maple Long John.
Long John donut and a
Dunkin' Donut coffee.
Very small iced coffee. No, it's like a thirst buster.
Yes. So, yeah, because usually I go with a kid in the morning who wants to go to Dunkin' Donuts, but I'm on vacation, so I only, this happens, I think, once a month because the other kids want to go other places.
Okay.
So, for some reason, I was getting here, I'm like, man, I haven't had my once a month donut. I gotta get my once a month donut.
So you're like, I want that.
I want that. So because I'm an American, I went and got it.
You did, yeah. You said I want it. I'm gonna get it. Eric, I have a request for you.
What?
Can you move your phone off
Dang
the
it,
table?
you get like...
And you put it on another hard surface.
That's
We're
right.
still going to hear. Yeah, that's interesting. Hey,
a little bit of rebellion.
Yeah, a little bit. Eric and I have we've been on various little summer adventures. I was at a church gathering in which my wife and I got a little bit of extra time to hang out in San Francisco. Eric's on his half-year sabbatical he gets every year, which is pretty amazing as a pastor. Wow, what's it like, Eric?
Half-year sabbatical. Well, I wish I had a half-year sabbatical. It's a month, and I thought I got a lot of vacation till when we were at that pastor's meeting, and we went around and talked about the kind of vacation that you get.
Yeah, some of those guys get a lot.
And to find out that, the amount of time that the village gives me, which I thought was remarkable amount for vacation, is not even what a beginning pastor gets when he goes to a church. Of course, my salary's also...
Probably of a specific denomination or two.
Yes.
In which there's a lot more resource.
And money.
And you've have put a lot more money into your education to get into there, and I guess so somehow you've earned it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway...
I get a couple weeks a year.
Yeah, I get...
That's kind of... I feel like that's pretty normal. I'm not bothered by it.
I've been working at the village now for 18 years, and usually somebody at a place with 18 years usually gets about 6 weeks, which is about what I get.
Yeah, that's good for you, man. So how was it?
So far it's been really good, except that I was telling Sue this morning, and part of this is because she's off too. I just don't want to do, if it's not fun, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do the projects that I got lined up for myself.
Oh, because you've got honeydews or your own dues.
I have
things
my
that
own
need
dues,
things that
yes.
need to be done around the house.
Yes.
Yeah. Man, and the summer in Tucson is the stupidest time to do any of that.
Right.
Because it's ridiculously hot. And even if you're inside, I mean, I feel like those project lists for us should be in the winter.
They should be. And I should be off during the winter, too, so I can do that.
You should be off during the winter. Oh, I just heard your phone buzz over on the hard plastic chair.
Nobody else heard it.
Oh, we'll see about that. Anyway, hey, here we are 4 minutes in. Thanks, everybody, for tuning into our rambling. That's what's going on in our lives. It was just Father's Day, and so we're thinking about that. We, as many of you know, the premise of our podcast is that we do not plan. We are not Bible answer men. We do not come in here with great thought out things to deliver to you. But kind of the invitation of this podcast is if you were sitting down to breakfast with a couple of local pastors and just heard them talk about something, what would that be like? Yeah. So here it is. So as I said, I set through this out a couple of days ago in a podcast. I said, every once in a while you might get a weak argument from us because we're coming up with it right now. We have never discussed this before.
Yes.
Right?
Well, we talked about that recently as to one of your friends making that criticism.
Well, yeah, which was
so
fine.
I went back and listened to it.
And you thought
I would like to have him on.
Oh, me too.
Because I don't think it was a weak argument at all. And
I could see, yeah, it depends. I would like to know, where he's coming from on that, which is why I'd love to have him on or anybody who wants to, have breakfast with. But here's the deal.
Yeah, I don't know if I put that.
You got to bring the food.
That's right.
You got to bring the food.
Well, yeah. I mean,
you get to be on a podcast. You get to hit the big times.
Yeah, and maybe we were pitching some ideas about advertising. Might advertise for you if you get on the.
Okay, Eric wants to advertise for just random people at our church without their permission.
Well, without the permission.
And though they don't specifically do anything.
We talked about Ray. So poor Ray guy, we analyzed his sermon a little bit and talked on your 2 podcasts ago.
Yeah, so so let's make up a, hey, ever looking for a guy to know? Check out Ray. Ray's great.
He is awesome. He works at a radio station.
He has a black truck. He tends to wear shorts and a T-shirt and have some strong opinions about things.
About sound
and other things. And he's a great guy. He's just an all-around good guy. He has a dog named Lily. He likes to hike. Ray.
Bring him a cup of coffee.
There you go. There's our first advertisement.
And partly... Ray, your book was on the last podcast, an interview.
Ray's book?
No, your book.
I know.
Andy's book. And Ray is supposed to be on our podcast. So
yes.
we're just kind of prepping that because he's supposed to be here because he did
He and I have discussed. It's going to happen.
Cool.
Anyway, Father's Day.
Let's talk about it.
I mean, I don't want to
Let's talk about fatherhood.
Fatherhood. Yeah, I mean, so some of the things that, I don't know about your community, but a couple of things that came up this past Sunday are we don't do a big Father's or Mother's Day thing at church, and so there was a discussion that just happened naturally afterward about why we don't, and in that discussion there were a lot of I think you got some hints of people's pain when it comes to why they don't want to celebrate those days. And then, I mean, I've had a lot of conversations even really recently with people about how their relationship with their father makes it really hard to comprehend God. And it's easy to say, well, your father is a fallen, broken person. But it goes way deeper than that. Anyway, those are a couple things that I'm bringing into this.
Sure.
Just thinking about. I don't know how it.
Well. So
and my book's about my dad.
Your book's
you
about.
Have a dad.
I have a dad. Yeah, I have a father. I went and spent a couple hours with him on Father's Day.
Yeah.
So, well, let's talk from an aerial view first.
Okay.
Because you're always giving me a hard time about being a person who likes statistics, but I have some of these statistics in the back of my head already.
Great. Of course you do.
Because I think about fatherhood a lot
in
my job after 18 years of listening to the lack thereof, trying to figure out how to be one, all that kind of stuff.
Give us the stats.
But let's talk about the stats. The stats is that 50% of families are absent of father.
They don't have a dad.
They don't have a dad.
At all.
Right.
Well,
so that means that half of the kids, and maybe we could say, even if that's an inflated statistic, you're talking about a lot of children who aren't raised with a father.
Yeah.
But then you go to school.
Yeah.
And 80% of the teachers are female.
Uh-huh.
So there isn't even a male influence within your educational space. So you're being, and I don't have anything against women, but there's no masculine influence. There you go. I put it on the floor. The phone was buzzing again. So you have that, but then when you think about what does it look like to be a dad, most people don't know.
Right.
And I think when you look at the prisons, the majority of the men and women in prisons didn't have a father. There isn't a father figure present.
Yeah.
I remember one of the stats that's always shocking to me is that if you have a male in your home, not a father, just a male in your home while you're growing up, he could be a deadbeat sleeping on the couch all the time. You are 75% less likely to commit a crime.
Huh.
So being a male figure in a home, just that is hugely important to the development of a child. So
where do you find this information?
So the stats that I got, the stats for the prisons, school, I mean, you can find those anywhere. Those are pretty generalized stats that most people know.
Oh,
the ones
didn't know it. Sorry,
that's okay. The ones for I've read those so long ago I couldn't tell you where I found them, but they're pretty common. Most people,
if you Googled it these days,
you could find it.
That's what you mean by but everybody knows.
Yeah, you could Google those and find them. And people are going to argue over the 50% one, but that's fine. The one Lifeway has done a ton of studies.
Okay.
On that, so Ed Stetzer for those people who.
That's a good.
That's where the 75
name.
The 75% less likely to commit a crime stat. There's and those all come from a couple universities. I mean, Ed relies on other studies out of universities and stuff like that. But anyway, that's where I would get those stats. But they're kind of mind-boggling when you think about being a dad.
Yeah.
Is that your presence as a man, forget fatherhood, just as a man in children's lives.
Yeah.
Hugely important.
Huge. Yeah.
Hugely important.
Man.
So that's kind of the aerial view. If you drop down to being a dad, your dad, you have a daughter.
Yep.
How old is she?
12.
Let me guess, she's in 6th grade?
She's going into 7th.
7th, yeah. So you're going to have a middle schooler, like a full-on middle schooler.
I have a full-on middle schooler.
Right. That's like 7th grade's that's a big year. Mm-hmm. Yeah, of development and understanding who you are as a girl and a woman and what that, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I know all about that.
You did.
I'm doing a great job. Yeah, I just nail it every time. Yeah, every emotion she has makes total sense to me. Every reaction she has, I react back perfectly.
Right, and a lot of that probably started in 6th grade, maybe even in 5th.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I started experiencing some of that with Ashton.
Yeah,
5th grade. So what has that taught you about yourself?
That I know nothing. I mean, sorry. No.
And we're done with this podcast.
Yeah, and we're done. Yeah, I don't know. There's one interesting detail in my life, and that's that I did middle school ministry for 6 years. So I'm pretty grateful for that because I'm a little less surprised. And then, of course, and my wife there to say, like, I went through this. This is normal, So there's that kind of thing that I'm grateful that I'm not just going, what? This is out of nowhere. But yeah, it doesn't always compute with me, and sometimes I wonder when do I need to help her move through this versus when do I just need to be completely understanding and just let it go. And
well, how would you describe, like, because I remember the points of being in a relationship with my daughter when she was younger, where it was just this fun, like, she loves daddy, and then there's this transition that starts happening in 5th, 6th, and 7th grade, where your relationship changes, that gets some more depth, there's some more push and pull, there's, how have you, like, what's your relationship with her now in the sense of you learning about you and...
Yeah, I hate to throw this in the mix, but it is unique in our situation too, because there's her whole, like, there's 2 homes that have been involved in her life, and that's, like, currently changed drastically as well. So she's living with us full time, and so it's hard for me maybe to parse out how much is that, like, the trauma of that change for her versus just the normal stuff. And so that's hard to know. So honestly, like, we're in a bit of a state where it's tough for me there's just so much to navigate. And it's hard to know how much of it is just age and how much of it is that life is really hard. And then I do think about, though, I mean, I hear other kids' stories and I go, wow, this is a lot of people.
Yeah.
This isn't, it's probably more, it almost feels more rare that it's all it is you're just, it's hormonal changes. Like, when you look at America, when you look across our country, I mean, kids of this age are going through so much more than that. Anyway, so for me, it's hard to tell.
So you're being a dad of a girl who is going through the normal parts of things, but also has an element of trauma in her life that you're trying to guide her through all of that too.
And I'm experiencing some of it too.
Yeah.
And trying to
totally,
like, care for someone while needing care.
Yeah. So to go back then, we'll make it full circle.
Which is probably every dad.
Yeah.
To some degree.
Of
I don't
course.
want to be like, I'm the only one that needs care. I mean, every person, every mother, every dad is going through their own stuff as they're trying to. Which is, I guess, why our kids need God. Right.
Well, and you were going back to people are like, well, it's so hard for me to relate to God as father because statistically I didn't have a father, or the one I had didn't give me a great example. And so I don't, like, it's hard for me to find affection or a sense of relating. And yet God seems, to be pretty keen on this fatherhood thing. I mean, I don't know the numbers because I don't really care about how many times something appears, but I know that historically, I mean,
when it saturates the Bible.
It saturates the Bible, but when in the New Covenant, is where Jesus introduces us into a relationship with the Father, in the sense of the Lord's Prayer being a definitive spot where we can say Our Father, which was not a way a Hebrew would pray. That would be not something you would say. And then even Paul in Romans, though I think this is overused and it always irritates me because everybody says the Abba is daddy. No, it's not. What it was more like is what you would basically call your dad. It's like father, but in a familial way. That's what you would call him when you're hanging out in the house and say, "Hey, Dad, can I go get drive the car?" Not daddy, like, not that. Like, I always feel like they're saying it's that
it's
little
childish.
Yeah, childish. No, it's something an adult would call his father and his uncle and his because there was no delineation. Your uncle, there's no uncle in the Hebrew, so you're just father. They're all fathers.
Fathers,
yes, they're all abbas at some level. So anyway, but it's still intimate. It's still this introduction of familial, like you're part of the family.
Right. That's
not an Old Testament idea, but it is in that God is offering Himself as a father. We just weren't able to respond.
Weren't experiencing it. So I guess let's be a little open with our journeys here to help relate. So how has understanding God as Father been aided by your relationship with your dad, and how has it been hard to, like, look at the way that you and your dad relate and then go, okay, how is God different than that or the same, and where's the line, and where has it been confusing?
Well, and I think here's the thing that I learned after being a father is that I should wait for you to sneeze.
I'm not gonna.
Oh,
there was like a sniffle I didn't want to do in the microphone.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I just want to make
please
sure.
keep going. Please don't leave dead air for that.
You know what? Dead air for the sneeze. No, I think what I realized getting older is that my father's not supposed to be an example of God. My father's supposed to be a pointer to God. And that's really helpful, because if I'm looking at my dad to tell me...
Well, poor guy, first of all.
Right, that's not fair.
Poor anybody. Poor me and you. And everybody. Yeah.
So what I've realized as I've gotten older, and I am now 47 years old, is that my dad quietly, this is where you and I have a similarity in our fathers, gave me a spirituality that I didn't actually expect. Like, I didn't know I had. I didn't know was his.
Yeah.
But now that I'm older and I'm realizing how he interacted, the way he thought about things, little things he would say, the way he acted, what was important to him, all got implanted in me, but not in the way that my mother would implant things or other men in my life would implant things.
Right.
It was not through the front door.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet he provided space. He would say certain things at certain times that now the importance, for instance, in my life to communion.
Right.
Breaking of body and blood.
That's a big thing for you.
Yes. It's huge for my father. And now I understand why and how theologically it's connected to everything we do in every little bit of our life, and how my dad lived that and believed it.
Yeah.
And he implanted that. Also, having a compassion for people that was never elevated or decreased, but was very steady.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't get super excited about somebody or the transformation in their life, and he never he's never been in a place where he's like, I just need to be away. He's always like, I am going to point my face in one direction and care for people as God places them in my path.
Yeah.
And that's been a great example, so that it gives you longevity. You don't get burned out as quickly. And I see that. My dad's like, in his late 70s, and they're caring for people still.
Yeah.
And they have a mission and a purpose. And I suspect that though they've slowed down, they will live that out until they die.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful thing to be given. So that's the good things. I think the bad things is my dad lived, and he would tell you this, first generation Christian.
Yeah.
Lived under fear.
Yeah.
I also got that.
Yeah.
Right? He gave that to me in a lot of different ways. Again, not through the front door.
Yeah.
Right? But it was it kind of just in the way he did things. His fear inhibited him, and also was handed to me in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And
I had to work hard to undo that.
Yeah. I could see that.
So how about you? How would you? And you wrote an entire book on your dad, and
yeah, and you get, there's bits of it. That is, I think I just finished my into the editing, by the way.
Oh,
so there's
I'm so excited.
I need to caption some photos and find a couple things, but otherwise it's done.
Yay.
So I think I will keep my promise of it releasing in June. But there are a few ways in which, space, I always knew there was never a sense that if I went and talked to my dad, this isn't going to go well. And I think a lot of people don't get that. They think if I go and talk to my dad about it, he's going to get mad, or he's going to get stressed, or he's going to get whatever.
Sure.
And I had the experience where I could go talk to my dad about anything at any time, generally, and that was a very safe and helpful thing to do. He was kind and gentle and forgiving, and so those, I do find that I connect with those words in the scriptures about God easily. We've talked about this kind of in our staff team. Like, if somebody says to me, they get up front and they say, God accepts you just the way you are, I go, yeah, okay, no problem. Like, I believe that.
Right.
And a lot of that has to do with both of my parents, but especially my dad. That is, I could have messed up big time, but he wasn't going to get mad at me. He wasn't going to be like gravely disappointed, maybe sad, but I was safe with him. I was, and I could be there with him and work that out. And I always knew I was loved, never doubted it. He said it very rarely, but I just knew. And so those kind of things, when I think about, God, that I don't really worry about, does God love me? And so then with my dad, though, the flip side of those characteristics was he didn't fight. He didn't engage a lot. He didn't plan. There was never a point where I was like, Dad, what should I do next? And he goes, I would really suggest this.
Right.
He would go, well, I don't know. And so when I think of God, I mean, I realize I think things are all on my shoulders. And if I don't do this, then everything's going to fall apart. And if I don't answer this, when other people want me to answer a question, I feel probably a triple weight. That maybe other people feel like, I don't have to have the answer. I'll just tell them what, but I'm like, I have to, because who else will?
Right.
Which isn't true.
No.
And I should be able to point them to God, and I'm learning to, but I think just by the nature of my journey, my relationship with my dad, I never was able to get clarity about what to do next. He wouldn't intervene and take care of a situation when I didn't know how. Like, I tended to have to figure it out myself, and he would be there supporting me.
Right.
So I think there are things about God that I recognize I struggle to believe, and a lot of it ties back to him, and I don't feel like I'm beating him up. I think we all are offering such things to our children and
we're
others around us.
And as fathers, I think the thing that's going to be hard for our children to shake is the value system, especially if we're followers of Jesus, that we hand down to them because we're involved in their lives.
Right.
We have a value system. They're going to connect that as a father. And this is something mothers offer too. But
yes.
As a father, this value system, they're going to lay it over God. Yeah. It's a faulty value system.
Right.
Because it's a system of saying, this is what makes you okay. This is what makes you valuable. And it's not always going to be what God says is good and valuable. And because I'm a broken person and I live out a very faulty understanding of my own value and my family's value. So, having to shake that is hard. In fact, for me, the value system that my father in particular, but I think my mother probably supported, is that God is only okay with you if you're doing what he wants you to do.
Right.
And if you're not, then he's happy to let the natural consequences teach you what you need to know.
Right.
And so if things are not going well in your life or the way you think they should be going, then there's something wrong with you and you aren't following God and you are in sin in some form. And that's a heavy burden to carry because then you don't really...
Every time it's not going right, you go, what have I done?
Right. And God's only brings blessing when you line up with what he wants you to do, but he mysteriously won't tell you because my dad wouldn't always tell me what he wanted me to do.
And so you would find that you would do something your dad didn't want you to do, but you weren't sure what was expected in the first place.
Yeah.
And sometimes God feels like that.
Yeah. So that's something to undo that. And I think I used to be upset at my father for giving me those value systems.
Yeah.
Now I'm at a place where I just am like, oh, my dad he didn't know any better. And
he was living out of...
He still doesn't know any better. I mean, he's broken.
Right.
I don't know any better. Yeah, I'm trying to grow in Christ. I'm trying to have a value system that's healthy, but that's a lifetime work.
Now, what do you say? Because this is something, we have a lot of young families in our church with kids. What do you say to the person who's like, I have to be a good dad? Like, I am going to make it my mission to be a great dad.
I'd say you're going to be the worst dad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, be careful, right? Like,
be careful.
Because I that's a thing that, and I think, people are on ends of that spectrum, but man, I just think, you're in that in that drive to be the best, you could, there's some major pitfalls, and you're just not going to be the best.
No.
You're not. And like that, and if you need to be the best dad, then your kid's going to get from you that they need to be the best kid.
Yes.
And just the tension that can happen between those two realities, it's not gospel centered, and it could be really, really hard.
That's not me.
Apparently my backpack is not enough.
Oh yeah, man, he keeps telling to take the phone off the table.
Whoever just called, I just threw the phone on the ground, and that doesn't mean I don't like you. I don't even know who you are.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all right. No, I think those are, while you were talking, I was thinking, a lot of times young parents and young dads in particular, they think, oh, I'm going to be the best dad, so I've got to do all these little things with my kids. I've got to,
right.
I have to have everything right. I need to make sure all the little bits of whatever. The thing that I've learned is that from 0 to 10, you being in the house is important.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're not going to remember.
Yeah, going out to coffee or doing whatever doing little things, going on little adventures, those are all good.
Yeah.
Don't make them the main part of their life.
Yeah.
Make them learn to be self-sufficient, entertain themselves, because you're going to have to be on full gear is 10 to 25.
Right.
Because that's when they can think abstractly. Yeah. That's when they can think, that they want relationships.
That's when they need the coffee date. It's easy to take them on a coffee date when they're 4.
Yes.
Right. And sit them down and like, what's your favorite color?
Right.
And they won't remember it.
No.
But you're going to need to do that. Yeah.
And I would recommend that you do some of that when they're little, but not for them. I would practice. I'd practice talking to them about things that are way bigger than they understand. Like I remember when Ashton was, 3, we would go out, we would have, I don't know where we would go, and I would sit down and I would talk to her about dating.
You're right.
Because I was just practicing because I needed to know, I needed, and I talk about women's value, and I would talk about, she didn't know what I was talking about, but I was practicing for when she was 10.
Yeah, interesting.
Because I wanted to not be afraid to talk about those things and feel anxious about it. I wanted to have that already there.
And a big thing is you're gonna realize, I feel this all the time, like you're going to just fail your kid like every day, or your kids, and so like a really comfortable place you're gonna have to get into is like repentance to your family, right? And just being able to acknowledge I may have not done that right, and that I may have hurt you in that conversation or whatever.
Being able to talk.
I wonder if like the having to be the best dad ever makes it harder to admit you're not
the
like
best
a lot
ever. Well, I think partly when we say that, what we're saying is we want to be really good friends with our kids. We're not, and
that's
because
that's not your that's not the role.
No, and because you can't really apologize to your kids if your kids don't respect you and want to be obedient to you and follow one of the main commandments of the scriptures is to honor your parents. And so when that's established, it's much easier to say, look, man, I really screwed up. Like I wasn't honoring you because I've been asking you to honor me.
Right. And
I'm not honoring you. But when you're like, hey, we're buddies and let's like work out and negotiate something together. No, that's not gonna.
No.
You're in for a very miserable fatherhood, of which you'll retire the best father jacket real quick because you don't.
Yeah. Because, that whole negotiating thing, your kids are still going to be peeved at you and things are just going to be nebulous the whole time. Yeah. Huh. Interesting. And then, but on the flip side, I mean, what would you say to people who are just like down in the dumps? Like, I'm just a terrible, terrible father. I just don't. I mean, I have a friend who said that his least favorite day at church for the whole year was Father's Day because they would go to church. There would be a talk about how fathers should be. And his dad every time would sit down in the car and say, well, I'm not doing a very good job now, am I? And they'd have to have this awkward conversation with dad about how much he stinks. And he said he just wished they could skip the whole thing.
Wow. So his experience was his dad's sort of own shame.
Yeah. Yeah.
And having to be part of that. Wow.
So, and that I think happens a lot, I would assume as well.
Well, and I think you and I, and then I guess our parents grew up, if we're followers of Jesus,
right,
grew up in this world where when you go to church, they instruct you on how to do things.
Yeah.
So when it's Father's Day, you get instructed on the value of fatherhood and how to be a good father.
Which is absolutely not what our church is doing, because
it's so unuseful.
We're kind of saying no to that. Yeah.
Right. Now, our problem has been that we, with Mother's Day and Father's Day, just threw the baby out with bathwater and trying to get the baby back
to where there's a little bit of a, like, we can celebrate a little something here.
And, right. Well, we can understand. Maybe we can reinterpret this into a way that is good and healthy and authentic. I think that's the problem. I think dads who are like, man, I'm a horrible dad. If you come to church on Sunday and the church chooses to talk about fathers, if it's like, hey, we all suck as a father. Thank God we have a heavenly father.
Thank God, thanks to God that he is the father that none of us are and never had, and that he fills in all the gaps. And that'd be encouraging.
Yeah, and then if you talk about, out of John where Jesus says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So you don't even have to. Jesus will reveal the Father to you. We don't need to worry about, like, Dad, you are stumbling through it. Your kids can tell you. They can list it out. Easily. But you're here.
Yep.
And what you are saying as a father, if you are here and you're here with your family, is like, I can't do it.
Yep.
But Jesus can.
Yep.
And that's
imagine this guy having heard that sermon and sitting down in the car. There's no, I'm not doing a good job, am I? It's like there should only be one thing to say, and that'd be, well, thank goodness for Jesus.
Right. Well, it also leads to, it's like, hey, that's kind of a shame thing, but it leads you to an honest thing. It's like, hey, guys, like, I know I've screwed up, and it's been hard, and this is Father's Day, celebrating Father's Day, but thank goodness Jesus, has transformed some of that and offers us a heavenly Father. Like, how we experience that together.
Yeah.
Because we all have him as dad. It's not me as dad and my kids have me as dad, and then they have, no, we are all.
Not tiers. It's all, he is our Father.
Yeah, we're sons and daughters together.
Yeah.
And we have the heavenly Father, which is powerful. Because he's willing to send his own son to bring us into that, which is a pretty remarkable. He came to reveal himself to us,
right?
And that should be.
And there's something interesting about and this is Trinity baffling talk, but the idea that a son would be so committed and proud of his father that he would sacrifice everything to reveal him. And, while being so united to him as Christ was. But there is that is what none of us could in good conscience do of our fathers. None of us could go, you all need this man.
And I'm willing to die for it.
But the fact that Jesus, as eternally coexistent with the Father, said, you do need this. And he is this good, and I am willing to sacrifice everything to share him. There's something.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Do that.
So maybe to end the podcast, we could talk about, because the one question we haven't really answered is, how have you and how have I experienced our Heavenly Father in a way that's different than our earthly father, and how has that changed the way we are fathers?
Yeah, I think interestingly, some of the ways in which my dad didn't teach me about God have been the ways that I've sought to know God the most and felt the most need to seek God. So I can't even be that mad at my dad. Like, if he'd fulfilled it all, if he'd given me all of it and I had no gaps and there was nothing to desire.
Sure.
Maybe I wouldn't have sought God. But I think my life evidences over and over that despite my stupidity and my lack of insight about the future and stuff like that, that God has had a plan actually, and has been fighting for me and has been deeply involved. And I think I still struggle to trust that the next day and the next day. But I think that, that's just a big part of my journey, is looking for that, hoping for it, praying to God, to God to help me trust in it. But also, I mean, if I really sat down and worked out all the ways in which, am I dead? Has everything failed that I've done? No. And was this my great, did I figure this out? Well, no. Especially not my, like so many things that I currently, the best parts of my life are not things I set out with a plan to do the way they happened at all, So, I don't know, it's an interesting thing that it seems like God's engaged in that exact theme with me in many ways. Yeah.
Has that impacted the way you father your daughter?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I think two things happen. I think one is I probably exude some of the stuff my dad did. I know I do. But not all of it. I think I'm always, almost with more faith than I can apply for myself sometimes. I'm kind of always talking to Abby about how, maybe we don't know what God's doing here, but don't lose heart. He's in control, and like pointing back to little evidences in her life and going, see this over here, and then look, and so I think because that stuff's on my mind a lot, I do share it with her, and I wonder what that'll be like for her to reflect on.
Yeah.
That's
cool.
How about you?
Well, I think my father was not a highly physically affectionate person.
Oh yeah.
And so there is, and that's hard to explain. I do experience a strong affection from God. Like I feel like he loves me in a deep way that I like, that's reassuring. I also feel, and some of this is what my father gave me and some of it's not, but God likes to have me on his mission.
Yeah.
That is not, and that it's not as complex, like it's not as linear as everybody would like you to think it is, God's mission. Just because Jesus gave us this, beautiful mission at the end of Matthew and the beginning of Acts, but that it's not as linear, and that he's, weaving a story that he enjoys and is not as in a hurry as I am.
Yeah.
And he likes that I'm on that journey with him. He's not worried about it all falling apart.
Yeah.
Like I am. And so when I, like, that part is really, it brings a lot of peace to me, which also has brought, I think, when I live in that, a lot of peace to the way I understand parenting my kids. Because, I look at them sometimes and I think, man, I didn't root them as best as I could in scripture or in the ways that I didn't guide them in this way. And I feel like I was like, not really, maybe you could do that better, but I'm not. He's like, that's not, I've got it. Like, we're doing it together. I'm not in a hurry. Like, because, it's not like if they didn't learn this lesson today, that they're not going to learn. I can't help them learn it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what the other thing about the fatherhood of God I realize, like, that I enjoy is I feel like God has repeatedly expressed to me that he's like, look, it's been 2,000 years since I, tabernacled with you as a human. And there's a lot of people who, been born, died.
Yeah.
You don't know who they are. And yet I do.
Yeah.
And you're going to grow old and die. Your kids are going to die.
Yeah.
100 years from now, most people won't remember you.
Yeah.
But I will.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. It's like I'm in some ways very insignificant in this world, and yet very significant.
Right.
And
there's a comfort to both of those.
Yes. Like extremely comforting.
The weight of the world actually isn't on my shoulder.
Exactly.
Remember that guy that failed 300 years ago that one time over in Yugoslavia? No.
No, I don't.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Right.
But God does.
God does, yeah.
And I think that's a powerful. I have those things. So that's changed the way. Like, I mean, when I'm not taking the world into my own hands, then I find that it helps me be a better parent.
Yeah.
Because the burden to be a good dad and to make sure everything's okay and to do it perfect and not mess them up is it's not.
It's an unbearable burden.
It is.
And it almost might somehow drive a wedge between you and them.
Yes.
If you're not careful. Yeah.
Right, because then there's a strong demand on them to get it right.
Right, because then it reflects on you.
Exactly, it's on them.
Interestingly.
Right. Which is that's a hard one as a parent. So I think that's
all right. That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us. And hey, we feel weird about saying this, but we really do. If you rate us,
yes,
you help us a lot.
Yeah.
Basically. So, we would love if some of you, for goodness sakes, be honest. I mean, I'm not saying go give it a 5-star. Give it whatever you want, but just engage with that. Take 2 minutes and go into your little app and click the star and say why. We would really appreciate it. So anyway, with that, thanks for hanging out.